Hi, welcome to the Empowerment Equation. Today, we're going to talk to special guest Katie Lorah. Katie has been referred to as an Ascension Key, as she can clear away obstacles to unlock your highest divine pathway and purpose. In her work, she accesses the Akashic Records and performs energetic healings to clear away energetic blockages, clear generational traumas, perform inner child healings, clear and heal past lifetimes, unlock higher timelines, channel messages, remove lower frequency toxins from the physical and energetic body, integrate soul aspects, and much more. On top of working with adults, she has recently started working with animals and children. Katie's also trained as an elementary educator, a special educator, and a reading specialist. It is her dream to shift the educational structure into a higher frequency paradigm. Welcome, Katie. Thank you for being here with us.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
Well, so
Welcome.
today we want to talk to you about how you got here. What led you to this path, and to having all of these abilities to help people. Were you born with it? Did it come to you over time? Was it sudden? We're curious.
Yeah, I mean, this is a loaded question. I could talk about it for a really long time. There are certain components where, like, I did kind of always have access to certain abilities. One of my soul aspects is actually a record keeper from the Akashic Records. And so as a child, I often found that I didn't really trust adults with guidance. I would ask them questions, and I was like, "That doesn't feel right," you know? And I started having these dialogues with what I just thought was myself. And I sort of had this understanding of like, "Man, I'm just really good at giving myself advice." I realized now what I was doing was tapping into my own record keeper and asking for guidance. There are things like that that happened. I also could see, I could feel like dark energies sometimes. We had actually a dark portal that was open in my home when I was growing up. And so I was sort of, uh, there was a lot of disturbances and they were very focused on me, of course, because I'm a light worker and I came in to do all of this work. So I learned really fast. I think by the age of 9, I started my relationship with Archangel Michael. And I realized that when I called him in and I called in angels at night to protect me, that I wasn't disturbed at night. But like the second I forgot, I would be, having terrible nightmares and things touching me and, stuff like that. So I developed those relationships very early on. My other abilities didn't come till later. I mean, I always was really into philosophy. My friends in high school, I remember, would just get so annoyed with my questions about the universe and how it works. And they were like, "You're making me crazy." So when I went to college, I studied Eastern religions and philosophies. And so that started, by the time I was 19, that started my meditation journey. So I've now been meditating for about 19 and a half years every day. Um, in that space, that investment, I'm a big fan of like just advocating for meditation time, no matter what that looks like. Because it is a time that you're investing in yourself and you're investing in getting messages and communicating with your team, your higher self, your spirit guides, and that kind of a stuff. So I've always sort of had this like interest in spirituality and interest in philosophy and interest in trying to figure out the questions to life. But it didn't really like these abilities that I have now didn't really pop until about 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago. Like it's been fairly recent. And it started with what I refer to as my spiritual awakening dreams. Now, when I was a kid, I would have these dreams too. Like if I had a specific question that I was really focused on, or something that I wanted to discover, I would have these dreams where I would get taken up to like a council and I could never see them. It was always, I was in like some kind of like heavenly temple or something. They were just these beautiful, bright, like light beings. And all I could see was the brightness behind them. And then their bodies were kind of silhouetted. So I never really saw who they were, but they would answer my questions. And then I'd wake up and it was like, cool, got that question answered. And that would happen periodically. But then I think it was early 2022 or maybe very late 2021, um, I was taken up to another like heavenly temple. And this being said to me, it's now time to wake up to your real mission on earth. And I was like, well, what is that? And he said, you're here to change the frequency of the educational system. And I had already been teaching for several years, probably about 8 or 9 at that point. And he also in this dream showed me my soul tribe, which had about 10 souls. 10 souls is, I think, about that much. And at that point, I hadn't met any of them. So it was like, oh, wow, like I haven't even really started my life yet. And I think I've met a few of them at this point, but there's still so much more to come. And then I had the following dream, like a couple weeks after that dream, where they told me to wake up, which was just a massive activation. I had another dream. At this point, I had never even heard of star seeds yet. Never heard of it, didn't really consider it. I knew a lot about like constellations and things because I've been interested in the stars since a kid, like most of us who come from other places. And I was again taken up to a temple and they started telling me about some of my past lifetimes on other star systems and galaxies. And when I came to, the only one I remembered was Pleiadian. And I searched it immediately. I mean, it was like one of those like early morning wake ups. It was like maybe 5 in the morning. And I came to and I was like, oh God, can I curse in this? Or is this like,
Yeah.
okay, I have I a sailor comfortable, so that's gonna come. I should just
Let her
ask.
rip.
So
Yes.
I researched Pleiadian,
Yeah.
and the term starseed came up, and it was just like, holy fucking shit! I can't believe this, and it was so activating all weekend long. I was like super excited, and I'd think about it. I'm like, no way, that's not real. No way, you know. And it's really validating in our work when we're told something and it comes from the inside and then the outside validates it, right? So having not heard that term before, finding out in a dream, you know, from a light being, coming to and realizing that that's a real thing that other people are experiencing too. That was a really activating weekend. Like I'll never forget the excitement. It was challenging at that time. That was like, I think it was right after COVID. And I like was feeling very confined in who I was around and where I was living. And so it was hard for me because I didn't have people to talk to about it yet. And it sounded really crazy. So it just felt like this kind of crazy secret that I was carrying around. Now, of course, it's so exciting because just more and more people are waking up and we get to have these beautiful conversations and activate each other in these beautiful ways to remember who we really are. And then, so it was after that that I just started investing a lot of time and money in working with different healers. It was kind of my goal. I wanted to raise my vibration as much as I could, raise my frequency so that I could start bringing in this stuff, you know, this ancient knowledge. And so I did a lot of trauma shadow work. And I had a particularly traumatic childhood, like many of us do. So there was sort of a lot for me to unravel in that first. And then I kind of got through that layer, started going through, you know, past life healings. And things just kind of went up and up and up and up and up. And I started accessing more joy all the time, more happiness all the time. And developing a really solid relationship with my team. And so now what I do is I just sort of tap into them and I tap into the team of my clients and amazing things are always happening. I had one recently. It was like this insane light mission and activation of Gaia that happened. Other times it's just, you know, removing removing energy. I recently did a woman I was working with, she's having terrible allergies, and my team was like, "Well, you can deprogram her allergies." And I was like, "What?" So I just went through this clearing of deprogramming a histamine response that she was having to the natural environment around her. And within 15 seconds of working on her, her sinus is totally cleared. She hasn't had an issue yet, you know? And so it goes from these crazy light missions to these really like practical things that we're going to do in our future to just, raise the enjoyment of our life together. I do feel like at a certain point, I mean, I do think we'll always need certain things. I'm a big fan of physical therapy, and doctors, of course, are helpful for lots of stuff. But I do see like allergy medicine, we're not going to need that at some point. Like we'll have people who can perform those codings and programs and deprogram the things that aren't serving us. So I guess that's how I got here.
That's incredible. I mean, I didn't realize that that was one of the things that was even possible.
Yeah, right. And I have to give credit to, a lot of what I do. At first it was really hard for me to, think about like a payment. It's like, I wish I didn't have to make people pay for this. Like, I wish I could just do this. Because a lot of it, I feel like, isn't necessarily even really me doing it. It's my team and it's my client's team. I feel like I'm just the vessel. But, at the same time, I've invested so much time and money myself into raising my frequency to be able to access, channeling that. But yeah, I think we've got a beautiful future ahead with humanity. So
Yes.
Absolutely. I know a lot of healers and light workers struggle with the whole accepting payment, and they get backlash online like, well, if this is a gift, why are you charging for it? But the reality is we still live in a monetary system. Bills still have to be paid. Even if you're a light worker, you don't live in a free house. You don't eat free food. You don't use free electricity. You don't use free water. And so until that comes, until we have free renewable energy and there's no need for money, then we still have to work within the system that we're living in. And so
yeah,
I think
yeah,
that
absolutely.
we just have to
Totally
start
agree.
looking at it that way. Because I've been looking at a lot of stuff about reframing your mind around money as energy, and it not be an exchange of money, and it be an exchange of energy. And money is just a representation of energy because they had to put energy to get the money. And so that's just the system we live in right
Yeah,
now. And
absolutely. Yeah,
that's
I mean,
helpful.
and
That's been
energy in
helpful to
exchange, it
me.
can look so many different ways. I channeled for somebody, they just had a quick question. It was a good friend of mine, and she was like, "I'll take you to dinner for this." I was like, "Great, that sounds like a perfect exchange. I'm gonna eat a lobster." No, I'm just kidding. But it can look a lot of different ways. And of course, the whole, once as people are starting to awaken, and the thing with gifts is like everybody's got, it's like fingerprints, right? Everybody has a unique method, a unique signature to their own healing abilities. I believe that everybody has certain abilities, and I believe that everybody has psychic gifts. It's just about raising your frequency to be able to access those. And we need each other in a community because, I've got mentors or peers that can do things that I can't, that I go to when I need certain healing, and then they'll come to me when they need certain things. And so it does sort of raise that exchange rate that you're talking about, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I like thinking about it
Hmm.
as an energy exchange when you do receive money for it. And I think that concept first it came into my knowing when I was working with some of the Reiki healers I know. And, during a class at the end, they were saying, okay, you will request an energy exchange of 111 an hour. And that's how they put it, not you're going to charge or, the Reiki session costs this. So I
Right.
thought that was an interesting way to position it. And now I understand why more.
Yes, totally. Yeah.
You know, Rowan, that's fascinating. Just the words you just said just really triggered me. You're right. I think that, well, one, I know I've come to realize that words are spells and that words are charged with energy. So when she said charge, that's a very aggressive word. I'm going to charge you. Or even you said it cost. When something costs, then that is a detriment to you. That's something you have to release. You have to give up. So you're right. I think those words we've come to really just have very negative connotations around money, charging, costing. I like that you're saying it's an exchange of energy of $111.
Okay.
I'm keeping that one.
Perfect. Well, so Katie, I'm curious, how did you begin working with clients once you started to realize these abilities and use them for yourself?
Yeah, so I guess it was probably 2020, late 2022. I had just kind of been experimenting with, asking my own questions and stuff in meditation. Um, and I kind of opened it up to friends because it does sound a little crazy. Like it's still, there's some people you can't be like, hey, I've got these angelic and galactic aspects. Let me like play with them with you. It still sounds nuts. But I had this one friend, I was living in New York City at the time, and she was in on just asking questions. So we actually worked together. We would drive to school and back together, and she would, ask questions, and I'd pull down information, and it just kind of became this thing that we would do pretty frequently as a way for me to practice. Um, and then I joined. So I had also had, I didn't mention this, but have had a lot of health issues growing up since I was about 15. It's been constant health issues. And I managed to beat them, like Lyme disease when they told me I couldn't, 3 other autoimmune diseases, anorexia, like really crazy things growing up. And I just sort of had the sense of like, I was able to heal those, and I don't know how, but I want to learn because I could feel that there was like a healer inside of me. And so I took a course with one of my mentors. He's still a mentor today. And it just sort of started opening up like just energy coming through my hands. And so I started playing around deeper with friends. Let me see if I can clear that out of you, or I can feel that you're feeling this. Let's see what I can do with this. And it was always shocking. A friend's constipated and I work on them for 20 minutes and they go take a massive shit after. So like, it was like, this is crazy. Like stuff is moving. I can do these things. And then it was probably just about maybe 9 months ago, I sort of opened it up to payment. Because it is an energy exchange, and it takes some out of me. You can only do so much in a day or in a week. So I needed that compensation. And that first was with, friends, or my roommate's mom was actually we had a really beautiful contract in place that I was going to help her. And she was really my first client. And she would, we would do a session about once a week, and it was just, you just got to practice, and when you start feeling things and your team is telling you things and it fits with stuff, you're like, oh, I feel this huge blockage in your hip. Does your hip hurt at night? They say it hurts when you sleep. Oh my God. Yeah. And it's like, okay, cool. That's totally accurate. And okay, great. I just busted through that blockage. So that should feel better. I just heard a big pop and that felt so good. It's like, wow, you think about bones moving with chiropractic work, but for energy work to be able to do it, like, holy cow. And it's a lot of believing in yourself too, because there are so many times where at first after a session, I would get off and I'd be like, did I just make that shit up? Like, did I just make that up? But then I wasn't, I wasn't. I was listening to my team. I was listening to their team. I was listening to my record keeper aspect who wanted me to pull up this lifetime to clear it, and see, it's sort of, there's a lot of trust involved with practice. And then when you get that like soul fulfilling hit, right? It's like, clients are always thanking me for the work that I did, but I'm like, you have no idea. Like, thank you for like giving my life a purpose, like this is what I'm here for. Like, thank you for helping me break out of just being an elementary school teacher for the rest of my life, and getting to really do what I'm here for. So
So speaking of what you are here for, you didn't know that when you went to school to be a teacher, right? You just chose teaching. You just
well,
were drawn to.
yeah, actually, I wanted to be a teacher since I was a kid. That was, people asked me what I wanted to be. I wanted to be an elementary school teacher. Although it did change when I went to Temple University in Philadelphia, and I originally signed up to go into elementary education teaching, and I didn't make it past the first day of orientation. I was like, this doesn't feel right. And I went and studied Eastern religions. And then in the last semester of Eastern religions, I started studying nature schools. And that brought me back into education. And then I went to this amazing graduate program that developed like this, what's called place-based education program. And it's all about using like what's around you to teach. And so that it came full circle again. But you're right, I did sort of diverge a little bit, but then came back to it, but in a different way, of course. Yeah.
I call those side quests. I call those side quests in the game because see, when you went to go study the Eastern philosophy and religion, you did gain knowledge and stuff and
Absolutely.
what
Yep.
you're applying now. So it was a side quest. Yeah, I think we're always getting put back on our path,
Yeah.
and even when we're off the path,
Right.
it's still perfect because there's lessons there. There's people we're going to meet that change our lives. There's all kinds of things. It's so funny. My first choice when I was a little girl was to be an educator as well. I also wanted to be a teacher. So because I admired my first grade teacher so much. And it's interesting. I want to talk more about this, how you want to reform the education system, because I have guides as well that I'm in contact with.
Mhm.
And this is something that they told me is very necessary. And so I don't know what my involvement is in it, but because I homeschooled my own children. So I was a very young mother and I chose to pull my kiddo out because of,
Yeah.
I saw the negative programming already happening. I saw her, beginning to deflate. I put a very happy, exuberant child in, and I was getting back a very withdrawn child who felt incapable of a lot of things I knew she was capable of. So I said, you know what, this is enough. So we did
Yeah.
homeschooling, which
Very
quickly
familiar.
turned into unschooling. So I went the unschooling route, which we used the environment as well to learn. We used vacations, trips, outdoor activities. There wasn't really a curriculum.
Oh,
And she's
wow.
flourishing now. She's 28 years old and got her own business and doing really well. And everybody was worried. They're like, oh my God, you're going to ruin her. I'm like, no, as long as she has her confidence, she'll be fine. So, but that's something that I would love to talk to you about because I feel like part of the
Mhm.
problem with our education system now is that it is so much programming. It's so much programming and it's not enough freedom to explore what the child is naturally drawn to. Too much rigidity, too much times and bells and do this, do that. And it's just, it really, and also it with the grading and the testing that's in the US in order
Right.
to, the pressure that's
Mhm.
put on kids to pass the test makes them feel inadequate. And I just really abhor all of that. So what is your solution to changing
Well, I
this? What
mean,
have you downloaded?
everything that I can't
So
agree enough with everything that you just said, and there's no reason to even put that into my own words, because you said it really beautifully. I mean, those are all the pressures, those are all the programmings, and I'll just add that like that's the nature of the three-dimensional matrix that we're in, right? It's sort of created to suck you dry so that you don't have time and energy to put into other things. Teaching is one of the lowest salaries is another thing. So when I was having trouble with like my sessions and what should I ask for payment, I sort of was really devaluing myself because I was comparing it to what I was making as a teacher. And I shouldn't do that because, that's not an equal energy exchange, right? Going back to that. It's not any teaching because teachers really do a lot of work.
right.
So in order for me to actually even get into working, and I forgot to mention that, but I became a reading specialist because I couldn't do the 9 to 5 teaching thing anymore. I was absolutely exhausted. I knew that I had all these other gifts and I had no energy to even practice using them. And so I quit teaching when I was in New York City, and then, started just working, part-time, 20 hours a week so I could have the space to explore. So that's actually what broke me open to even exploring any of that, right? Like that was my first step to realizing I got to get out of, this three-dimensional rat race that I'm in, even though my heart is in working with kids, and wanting to teach self-discovery. Like, I can't do it within this structure. Now I'm still working in a school because I love kids so much. So I've got to figure out kind of how to get this, like, this paradigm shift program going in order to bring kids back to me. Because I just I can't function without kids in my life. So yeah, I don't know how to answer your question. I know that there's a lot of us that are wanting to do this work. And I know a big reason I'm here today, Lyra, is to get to meet you, and to spend more time with you, Rowan, because I know at this point we're starting to like buddy up for these bigger missions that we're on. Um, I was, when looking at my own records regarding education, I was shown 7 souls that I would be working on a project with about, this shift in education. Um, and I think you're one, Lyra. And I met who I think is another one very recently. And so there's just about 3 or 4 people that I've met. Um, for me, I mean, I can tell you what I want it to look like. I do believe like we need to obviously have certain academics that are taught. We just still live in that kind of a world. We're not telepathic yet. So in order for them to access the world, they need to be literate. And I'm a reading teacher, so I love words, despite that they do have
Yep.
limitations, which we can get into, but it's really fun if you can dissect them and figure out
Right.
where those came from. But my mission would be to really teach kids about how to access their own teams. How do you access your higher self? How do you communicate with your spirit guides? How do you regulate emotionally when things are feeling tough? How, like, just to be outside of the matrix, like when you're feeling down, kid, you can actually just call in fairies to pick you back up. You know what I mean? Like little things like that like the normal world doesn't know. But when a kid comes into my office at school to learn teaching, I hope none of them watch this, but I'm with each kid for like around 30 minutes. We probably do about 15 minutes of work, but their reading skills are hardcore, way better with me than with other reading teachers. Kids who like were at a 6th grade level and reading at a kindergarten level have like upped their game a couple grade levels, really quickly, because I think I'm in there just doing codes most of the time, without even with reading just being a little bit of a backdrop, but with like the codes and the safety and the sense of belonging and the way they feel seen and the joy that they have when they're in there, like that allows the information to sink more deeply. So I do want to be, in a program where emotional welfare is the main thing, community, networking, time with nature. Gaia is a big part of my sessions. She comes in frequently. Just every time I even think of her, I just smile because she's just such an amazing, amazing, amazing star being. But that connection is really huge for me, and I want to bring that connection forward. I mean, to like the other day I went for a hike and this like hummingbird was like kind of hovering on the ground in a shrub. And I was like, what are you doing in there? And it started going crazy. I've never heard a hummingbird make these sounds before. And Gaia came in and she was like, no, it's a fairy giving you light language. It's a blessing. It's a gift. And I was like, oh shit. But we might not know those things. Like somebody else might be getting that and have no idea. And I want to make that connection. I want kids to wake up to like the magic that exists all around us all the time, so we can just live in just absolute joy together. So that's sort of like the experience I want the program to have, you know?
I absolutely love that. I love that. I love that you're helping these kids with their codes while they're learning their English. This is just, it's amazing. Thank you for doing that and just feeling
Yeah,
called and following your
thanks.
calling to do
Yeah.
that for these children. That's beautiful. It's really beautiful. I love your vision. I totally want to get with you and talk more about this because of what I envisioned as well in this is encouraging children to get to know themselves. And I am a strong believer that in astrology and um, zodiac, and that we are given blueprints. I feel like all of that, the stars and everything, is a
Yeah.
blueprint and kind of a code, if you will, to what we came here to do. I think you can see it in the astrology. You can see your gifts. You can see your talents. You can see your purpose. It's all been coded and written out. It's just that we are been discouraged that it's woo woo, that it's that it's nonsense. So I'd love to start teaching children numerology, astrology, have them dissect their own charts, their own numerology to see what resonates, so they can feel more empowered to follow these urges that they're having, that they really love to paint or they just really love being with animals. You can see all of that in somebody's astrology chart. You really can. And it's, I think, self-discovery.
Yeah.
It's kind of like almost going back to the mystery schools, because I believe that Christ when Christ left, and we don't know what happened to him in the Bible when he was gone for all that time, I do believe that he traveled and went east, and he went to these mystery schools and he learned how to become a master of
Yeah.
energy, and was what we're talking about essentially. So I'd really like to have modern day children have that available
Yeah.
to them, and it doesn't need to be a
Yeah.
secret anymore. It's just, it needs to be revealed to these kiddos, because, and they're so open to it because like the Bible says, they have the child of a mind. They're able to ask these questions, and they don't have all these blockages and all these things that are not possible. Like, oh, there's fairies aren't possible, or astrology is not possible. It's like they don't know what's possible. So they're so open to absorbing and learning and integrating so much quicker than even we are as programmed adults, because we have to dump all the programming before we can even begin to
Yeah,
accept this
absolutely.
stuff is
And just to
possible.
like add to that, like a
So,
story of I've
yeah.
noticed a big shift in kids before COVID and after COVID in the classroom. Like, you know, when we were kids and we were in public schools, there was sort of this sense of like, I'm an
Mm,
authority figure and you listen to what I have to say, right? And we sort of, I mean, I was a little bit of a troublemaker, but I still essentially abided by that.
right.
And then even before COVID, even though that was getting less and less and less over time and kids are questioning more and that kind of a thing, post COVID, it is like, I mean, you should, in the teacher world, they're like pulling out their hair. What is this? They're so undisciplined. They don't listen to anything I have to say. They question everything. They're so poorly behaved. And to me, I'm like, no, they're awake. They're awake. This is so exciting. They're awake. And I started noticing kids post-COVID asking me questions like, I could just go by Katie too. I worked at a school once and they made me go by Miss Laura, and I like almost threw up every time I heard it. I go by Katie. That's it. But Katie, what if do you think that like we could be aliens and like we're here from other places? You know, and they just ask these straightforward questions, and it's like, actually, I do think that, you know, like, don't tell your parents yet, but I'm totally on board with this. Like, let's talk some more. And kids are like, I think I'm telepathic. I'm like, you totally are. One kid recently was like, I think if I really focus, I could walk through that wall. I was like, I have no doubt about it. Like, we just got to figure out how to turn ourselves into light, and then we walk through it and reform. Like, yeah, let's try it, you know? So I wasn't asking those questions when I was a kid, you know, like
Yeah.
I loved stories about aliens, but I thought they were here to abduct us. You know, it was scary. Like, so they are really awake right now. And it's the perfect time for us to tap into that. So do you read astrology charts, Lyra? Oh my gosh.
Yes, I'm training myself to do so. I would not call myself an astrologist, but I've been actually interested in it since I was about 13
Cool.
years old. I got my first big book of astrology at 13. It was, I don't know,
Yeah,
the sun signs. Do you
I
remember
don't.
Linda
But
Goodman, I
I've
think,
not
wrote it?
I've not met
Yeah.
And
I
astrology,
started
like
ages ago.
I do love astrology, and I do follow like Pam Gregory, who's great on YouTube, and she'll give these little updates, and I really like those. But I've tried a few astrologers, and I've never been
Mhm.
satisfied. I've never felt like they've really gotten to who I am. So maybe that's something that we could do an exchange on in the future. Yeah, that'd be cool. That would be so fun.
I would love to have a look at your chart. Yeah.
I was gonna say it'd be interesting too, Katie, if you had like a look at your chart when you were located in New York versus where you are now.
Oh, cool. Okay, well, I've moved a lot of places. So I grew up in Philadelphia. I lived in New Hampshire, Vermont, New York City, and now I'm out in Arizona. So would you have to look at all of them, or just like what was your thought there, Rowan?
Oh, well,
Yes.
the reason is
Okay.
because I do astrocartography. So there are different, there's energy there's energy grids within the earth itself. And then there's an imprint that happened when you were born, wherever you were born. So as you move along and as you place yourself in different locations, you will experience certain energies differently, depending on
Ah, that's
what the
cool.
astrology was of that location the moment you were born. So
Oh,
you
I'm
can have
so
moon lines other places, sun lines other places. Like where I moved, I have a sun line, and as soon as I got here, I got immediate attention. I got so many offers. It's like, oh my God, you're here. We want to work with you and do this. We want to work with you and do that. And I'm like, oh my gosh, okay, it's overwhelming, but that's what living on a sun line is like. So you can go live on a moon line, and you can feel very comfortable in a place. You get somewhere. In fact, Rowan came and visited me here, and her moon line is here, and she was like, I've just never felt more chill anywhere. Like I've been to the beach before and I've been to I've been to
At
the
home.
forest before. She goes, but this place, I just feel like really calm and at
Yes.
home.
Well,
And I was
I'm
like,
gonna go live
that's the
on that
move for
moon
you.
line so
So,
that I can open up more of my abilities, you know,
yes.
really bring the energy out and the manifestation and all of
yeah.
the things I'm headed for. I think living on the moon line is gonna do that. And I wouldn't have known if she hadn't done my astrocartography.
Ooh, I'm so excited. That'll be so awesome.
Yeah. So I'm sure as you've moved around to these places,
Yeah.
you've probably felt
I'm outside
energy,
of Sedona.
especially now that you said
About
you're in
30 miles.
Sedona?
Yeah.
That's a
Yeah.
really, everybody goes there for I heard so many spiritual people go there for energy upgrades because they
It
said it's
is.
just the
Arizona
energy you
itself,
feel is
like when I first
just
moved out
phenomenal.
here, I had a headache
So,
for like the first, I don't know, 2 weeks because there was just it was such high frequency coming in. And I do think like high frequency areas help with like connecting with galactics and stuff like that because you're sort of in this free, it's like a wavelength that you can kind of hit. And I had a moment where
mm,
my sister and her best friend came out to visit in April, and we spent some time in Sedona, and we decided to go up to the airport Mesa, which is, they call it one of the vortexes, but Sedona is an entire vortex in and of itself. So, but it's known for that. And we watched the sunrise. But as we're watching the sunrise, like can't even tell them the stuff that's going on. I'm like seeing codes and all this stuff is happening, and they're like shooting the shit about dumb stuff. And like, I don't even know what to tell you guys. Like, you're totally fucking missing out right now. So it is very cool. But along with what you were just talking about, when I was born on the East Coast, and I moved around a lot on the East Coast. Um, and I had mentioned that I had a somewhat traumatic childhood, and so there was a lot of, despite I had done so much shadow work and inner work, and I felt like I had gotten through most of it, but there were still things that were coming up. And my team had told me that I had to move to the Southwest. That was a whole thing, actually. They led the whole thing in little bits and pieces. I feel like I completed step 10 first and step 1 last. And it was just part of me, my trust in them and building a relationship and communicating with them and following their steps. But they had said, like, your nervous system can't really relax until you leave the East. Like, you have to leave the East Coast. And when I came out here, it was so easy. I didn't even really have to do any more shadow work. It just sort of like shed from me. So that's that experience that makes me think about what you do, because there was probably some kind of cool line I stepped into that allowed that to kind of go. So
Right. I would love to see your astrocartography because you very well may have
Mm-hmm.
been living like on a Pluto line or a
Yes.
Saturn line where all the trauma happened.
Mhm.
Because it that brings restriction, Pluto, and endings and things like that. So it can be, so some people are actually afraid. Like, I know where my Pluto line is, but I have a Scorpio North node, so I'll probably be fine. But I look at those and I'm like, huh, I wonder what's going to happen there. So you can kind of look and
Mhm.
see what your experience is going to be in certain places. You know, if you're going to feel comfortable, if you're going to get triggered, if you're going to feel very active. If you've got a Mars line, you may be really like doing a lot of outdoor stuff and very active. So it's all very fascinating, and I think it's a gift that was given to us by Source, and it's been poo-pooed on, and now it's having a resurgence. And I think that they're
Absolutely.
codes, they're keys,
That's
it's
right.
a map. You
It's
know,
so interesting to me
you
too
just gotta learn to
because
read it.
it's just like another layer of what I do, right? Like, and that's not my thing. Like, I want that to be your thing. That's not my. I don't think I would understand
Mhm.
it. It would be like totally overstimulating and overwhelming for me. But my experience, so like with what you're talking about and the trauma I went through, for me, it's like, I've learned over time. It's like, oh, this is not this family that I came in with. Actually, they're not souls I ever met before. So that's why I felt so lonely. But in your perspective, there's
Mhm.
probably like this beautiful like reason for it, and I just like how things layer up like that. Yeah.
Yes. I do. I prescribe to the idea that we do on the side before we incarnate. I feel like before we incarnate, we have an agreement of things that we want to accomplish as a soul incarnate. And so there are certain things we pick, and there are certain challenges we pick because no game is fun without a challenge. You don't learn anything. And I do think that life is just
Hmm.
the most fabulous game ever created. And we've come here to play and have fun and grow. And if we came, you'll see even people that are born with a silver spoon in their mouth and have everything, they'll create challenges for themselves through either addiction, depression. There's all kinds of things.
Yeah.
So I think
And
that the
now what I
soul
know too
wants
is
to be
like that was a big
challenged.
part of
So
well, I came to clear the lineage of this family that had a lot of like densities that I was trying to clear, and it was sort of um it was an agreement like, okay, I'll come in. I'm going to go through all this shit in my childhood, and that's going to activate me to become all of these things that I want to be. And I'm going to clear the lineage for you, and that's going to be the exchange. And I actually at this point have crossed over about 14 ancestors from this lineage who were like, thank you so much for taking this family line on and for helping us heal. Like, we're here to be let go now. And so I just walked them to the light and watched them all go, and they were all very gracious and thankful. And so it was like, oh great, okay, I served that purpose, and thank you to this family lineage for giving me all these activations of my gifts. So it's really beautiful, the agreements we make.
That is beautiful.
yes,
And I
that's
know, Lyra,
very beautiful.
go ahead.
Yeah. It's
I was going
hard.
to say, I know you talk about it as being here and playing this game, and it's supposed to be fun, but sometimes those things we go through that we've chosen for ourselves and our chosen families are not fun. But I think you're right, Katie. They make you who you are, and when you wake up, it starts to become fun when you realize that you're responsible for this all along and you chose it and why you chose it and where you're going with it. So,
Exactly. Well, and for me, having trauma, that was part of like, I spent about 7 years at this one school, and it was a school for children with trauma backgrounds. And I was so good at, well, of course, now I realize looking back, like I can feel vibrations. And so it was easy for me to pick up on what it was and stuff. But I was well known in that school for being able to build relationships, for knowing why they do the things they do, for seeing past the behaviors, for helping them come up with better solutions, to feel trust, to feel safe, to feel a sense of belonging. A lot of those kids had been arrested I mean, and I had third, fourth, and fifth graders in my room, and they'd already been arrested because their childhoods were so traumatic that the cops had to get called on them. And they would come to me, and very quickly, I mean, it was their first time ever loving school. I mean, parents would be like, oh my God, I don't have to like yell at them to get out the door. They're excited to come. And it's because of my trauma growing up that I knew what all those indicators were. I know why you're doing this. I know what the intention is, and let me help you come up with a different way to get what you need, but that's safe. And that brings kindness in. And, you know, so a big part of me being an educator is because of this childhood.
Absolutely. I was shown even in my own astrology, because I've lived a life of not trauma, but a lot of start and stops, a lot of like, oh, I'm so excited, and then it failed. Oh, I'm so excited, and then it failed, or what my perception of what a failure was. But then it was revealed to me later that everything I was going through wasn't necessarily just for me. It was for others, because I was supposed to become a leader and teach. And I had to be able to step into all those shoes and have that perspective of what they are going to go through and come to me with, and go, oh, I get that. I've been divorced. Oh, I lost a business. Oh, I got a home foreclosed on. Like, it's like, it just, I took it so personally, but now I can look back and go, it's great that I can relate to all these things without judgment and go, okay,
Yeah,
I've been there.
that's
I know
exactly it.
what's going
Yeah,
on.
that's what makes people like us
You know?
leaders, is being able to relate, you know? So we kind of got to go through the gamut of experiences sometimes to get there.
Mm. Yeah. And that was part of my healing, was getting through the trauma, all the losses and the perceived failures, and thinking that it was my fault. And then realizing that, okay, it was a gift, you know, it was a lesson, because now I can help others.
Beautiful.
So that was helpful in the
Absolutely.
healing.
Yeah, and we're
realization,
clearing
you
so
know?
much as we go too, as like a lot of us light workers. I don't know when we're going to realize exactly how much we've been doing this whole time, but you know, you come to this planet with a certain frequency, and in all of those situations, I mean, who knows the kind of clearing work that you were doing for those people, you know, or activations, and then the exchange of codes, and you know, it's really. I hope one day we get to really see what kind of like,
Right.
you know, go back and see the movie again, you know, and without having to live it again, but like watching it, like, oh, wow, that's what that was. Like getting the
Yeah,
behind the scenes here, you know, like,
that's what that was.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, the making
Maybe in
of.
that review at the end when we leave these bodies, so we get to see it all, you know, the impact we had.
Yeah, that would be awesome. I once was in it was not my session, it was but it was a session that somebody else had with my mentor, and he was sharing about it, but he was channeling a soul aspect. I believe it was Arcturus, and she was saying that there, like, we have amusement parks here, and there it showed like them sitting in like what was considered like an amusement park, but they were sitting in almost like a very small movie theater, and it was playing joy moments from their life. So somehow it like connected in, you know, with their soul on a certain level, and then it projected all these joy moments, and they just watched them, you know? And it's just like, wow. I mean, I love a roller coaster, but like that sounds so much better. You know, like, so the things that might be possible, you know, like you talking about the review made me think of like, wow, there's just so, when we get to a higher frequency place, oh my God, we might be able to do that while we're still alive, you know? I mean,
Yeah, that would be really cool. Yeah, I think the only thing that's
Absolutely.
even close to that right now is the Inside Out movie, right? Where she gets to take memories down and they review the inner brain.
or the Harry Potter, they pour that potion in that water and they look and see.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
That always seems painful and scary, though, in Harry Potter.
Well, they have to make a movie where Harry Potter's like older and happier so we can see how the trauma helped him over time.
Yeah, maybe he has happy children because Voldemort has been vanquished.
Uh,
Well, Katie, I want to thank you very much for joining us today. This has been an amazing conversation. Can you tell everyone how to reach you if they would like to schedule with you for a reading or clearing?
Oh, sure. Yeah. Well, I mean, a big part of where I advertise is Facebook. So if you look up my name, Katie Lorah, on Facebook, um, I do actually get a lot of requests every day. So I might sometimes miss them. So maybe send a message on top of that to let me know that you sent one, because I'll get like 200 to 300 a day, and it's like very overwhelming for me. So I definitely don't catch up enough with those. But then I have a Calendly link, which you can find on my Facebook where my bio is. But I don't know, Rowan, if it's possible that we can attach it to the podcast itself and people could just click it there.
Yes, I can put your Calendly link in the description. And for those who don't know how to spell your last name, I'll say it's Katie and then Lorah, Lorah. But I will put the link in the description.
Thank you. That would be wonderful. Thank you guys so much for having me. It was such a beautiful conversation, and I can feel that there's so much else for us to talk about. So I'm glad.
Yes, we'll do it again.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Talk again.
Well, until next time. Yes.
Excellent. Thanks so
Bye-bye.
much for coming. Bye-bye.